Now, very briefly, I'm going to explain a lot of different things to you. Now, very quickly on the rundown. First, I want to give you a little bit of history. So we actually were founded in the Weimar Republic, and it was really just about simplification from within the economy. That was actually something that was kicked off by the government. The idea was, of course, that the economic participants can actually give themselves their own rules. Now, you can really kind of picture that specifically. That, for example, the textile industry, back then it was simply an unregulated market, and at RAL, you were able to register under a so-called registration number, and then there were certain requirements that said what sort of requirements a textile would have to fulfill so that it could be classified as a silk. So that's really something that, nowadays is called standardization. That's something that RAL was already doing in the Weimar Republic. In 1927, we got RAL colors. RAL colors, you might have already seen once or twice. Same core thought, rationalization. So here, for the very first time, we had colors being measured on a metric scale. And that in the beginning was just 40 colors, but that, of course, was the kickoff for color tones actually being communicated or being able to be communicated. Now, of course, we could speak of burgundy red, but at the end of the day, nobody really knew what that meant before the classification. And then a lot later in 1978, we got the Blue Angel. I'm sure a lot of you know this one. This all is led back to an initiative of the Federal Office of the Environment, and RAL is actually the central awarding body for this thing. The same thing holds true for the other qualifiers. This is once again, of course, very important. In 2008, we get the RAL logo license. That was about the Stiftung Warentest that we have in Germany. We're going to actually get back to that in just a moment. And then in 2015, we get the RAL Academy. Here we've got the 5 core components that we have. Once was the RAL quality logo, so I'm going to be talking about that. Now, RAL Farben, second oldest component of RAL. Now, like the other 4 components of RAL that you see on the right-hand side, actually spun off into a volunteer organization. Now, out of those 40 colors, we've actually made it all the way to 2,500. This is actually going all the way to web design, to special colors, so you can really see how it was intended by the website manufacturer. Now, then we have a RAL environment with the Blue Angel and the Eco Label. That's, of course, our biggest component at RAL. Most people are working there. The Blue Angel, as I said, I'm sure everybody will know this. But of course, the core thought of this entire thing is that we can label products that are particularly environmentally friendly and that are also more environmentally friendly than competitive products. Now, very important, of course, the awarding criteria. This is where we have a panel of judges, and it's, of course, always continuously evolved. And we now have more than 2,500 product labels. Also with the EU Eco label, we have our own judging panel, like the EU Commission. And for example, here we've got this catalog of criteria that is continuously being evolved forward. And of course, additional products are being highlighted because of that. Then, of course, the RAL logo license. Here we have the T sign of the Stiftung Warentest. RAL was actually one of the founding members. And you know this, of course, that from the products, we can see this so that you get a particular school grade. And here we can get certain licensing products with which the products can then actually advertise for a certain amount of time. The youngest member outside of the RAL quality mark is the green button, the grüne Knopf. And this is, of course, something textile-oriented. Again, here it's about particularly environmentally friendly products that are produced with environmentally friendly means or particularly sustainable. And you can find them more and more often, especially in discount stores. And then we have the Viral Academy, and here we're once again seeing with the Royal Academy that we are that we're taking a further academic approach with this entire thing, and that actually brings us to the RAL quality mark. This is our oldest component. Now, with the quality mark, it's about again rewarding a mark of quality to different products and goods. We have 150 of those different quality marks, and that actually also represents lots of different teams. And this also comprises the team that has invited you here today or is hosting this session today. And of course, RAL itself, or the actual initial part of RAL as a registered association, is still existing. And in this registered association, we of course also have lots of ordinary members, and these ordinary members are the quality groups. These quality groups are once again individually registered associations that are comprised from different teams. So, for example, with Windows, there are different companies coming in that are producing particularly, and basically they are determining the future of the quality group. And this quality group, again, has its own space within RAL itself. We also have, of course, a group of curators where you have lots of different representatives of economic associations and groups represented. It's basically a steering body to make sure that everything that we're doing is still in the service of the public. Now, we're talking, of course, about the quality marks. We have to actually talk about quality in and of itself. Now, certainly, this is something that just seems logical to everybody, but this is definitely something extra. Quality is something extra. This could, of course, be for example, environmental tolerability, sustainability. We've heard about sustainability just a couple of times today, just once or twice maybe. But of course, also things like user friendliness, customer friendliness, etc., etc. Now, the rules that are behind these things at least contain one of those aspects, if not multiples. That's very important. And then that brings us to the next point. Number one, where can I find these quality marks? Now, this used to be a pure B2B thing. That's why oftentimes this is completely unknown to the end customers if we're talking about the RAL quality mark. But at the beginning of the year, we actually saw that we actually launched a new quality mark that, of course, is also um, relevant to society. This is where we're talking about the acquisition of labor from abroad. There, we of course had a lot of need for quality. Oftentimes, people had their passports confiscated, and so that's what we simply needed to establish rules and check the quality. Now, this is actually within the agreement, within the auspices or under the auspices of the Federal Ministry of Health, and it's also for agencies that want to hire these people from abroad. So we want to really make sure that they actually stick to the German quality requirements and that these people also all get the right remuneration. So here in Germany, this is very important. You really do need that mark of quality. Very important. Now here you can see the breakdown. You can see this is also very interesting that we have three of the four quality symbols. You can see that Windows, for example, have a huge number of different quality marks. You can, for example, also see other ones, forestry, environmental care, laundry, etc. You might have already seen the quality mark for traffic and traffic signs. You might have seen this on countless traffic signs. So this is really just to make it obvious to you there are a number of different quality marks for all walks of life. But of course, the question is, what is the special thing for this quality mark? Now, what's centrally important is if we're talking about quality anyways, is that all of these requirements have to be met, and these requirements have to be above the standard requirement or the minimum legal framework. Now, you have to fulfill those things anyways because they're legal frameworks, but if you have a mark of quality, you are proving that you have more quality than the legal minimum. An additional central point, of course, is the neutral surveillance or supervision. So it doesn't work the way that it does work with other tests that products are tested initially and then just once and never again. And then they, after the first test, oh, this is just it. No, instead, products and services are supposed to be continuously assessed and checked. This is taking place via experts. And RAL, of course, says that this has to be done every year, once or twice. And it's basically a quality management system that is once again being reviewed externally. And then the third thing is that these rules and regulations that are behind the quality mark, they always have to be kept up to date. That's where it's very important that any novelty in the market is updated into the current frameworks so that you always have the right quality threshold compared to the bare legal minimum. Now, I've already mentioned it initially. A lot of this was designed for construction, for the construction industry, but now it's, of course, also applying to lots and lots of other um, walks of life and industries. So we can see what is unique for RAL is that it's quite similar to standards, that there's actually a public process. So for RAL, we are receiving a revision of a quality mark, and then when we do receive that request for a revision, we're working on that. We are working on this new quality mark, and we're going to work on making sure that we see what's going to be behind it. Now, once this is established, we're going to contact any and all institutions that are affected by this change. This could be ministeriums, it could be, a ministry, it could be individual companies, and then all of those would get these rules presented, and then they can comment on it. And then, of course, the applicant has to work together with RAL, and then they have to correspond to these comments in order to make sure that everything is taken into account in the future rule set. In that way, we want to ensure with RAL that these rule sets are desired, wanted, and tolerated not only by politicians but also by the public. And that way, we of course want to get the maximum out of our testing process and procedure. And in this way, we also can generate a reliable orientation for the end customers, but then also, of course, the users of the products. Now, out of all of this, we can, of course, derive various advantages. Number one, for the users of these quality marks, right? So, for example, for the window context, the people producing windows that want to have this mark of quality on their products. So, number one, this is a new development, and here the RAL sign of quality can be demanded publicly for public tenders. So then in the public tender, it could say all parties participating in the tender have to be in possession of this mark of quality, or they have to prove that they fulfill the same standards. And then, of course, you can also say that everybody who already has this mark of quality, it's just so much easier to participate in this public tender. If you don't have this mark of quality, then you will have to prove and undergo a big process to prove that you are fulfilling all of these things. Now, that's a lot of work that is involved here. So at this particular point, you can really save a lot of costs and work and effort. Another new development in the context of environmental friendliness, you actually have to um, prefer environmentally friendly orders. And I have to comment a bit more on this because the ARAL framework is being used in order to mark or highlight products or services that have a particularly high quality. In reverse, this means implicitly that there is a mandatory higher sustainability because, of course, there's also a higher half-life. So if a product is a higher quality, it lasts longer, and with is it is automatically more, more environmentally friendly because it is being used longer. And with that, of course, you're not even including the fact that these rule catalogs oftentimes have sustainability aspects included separately, right? That's not even included in that equation. But that, of course, on the flip side also means if you are in possession of such a sign of quality or a mark of quality, you can also prove that my products or services are particularly sustainable. And with that, of course, I'm then also profiting off these tendering criteria for more sustainable products. Sorry, for more sustainable orders. And then, of course, it's also an external mark of quality, right? You're getting this. And with that, of course, you can also advertise for your products if you have the RAL mark of quality. And last but certainly not least, this is again a new development. Since 2017, we've actually had the uh, EU regulation, which is being used to protect your own products. This is for trademarks. This is basically a guarantee. You are only able to sue against these companies to make them stop using something similar. But of course, if you now have this, you can actually sue them for damages. So if a competitor advertises with the RAL quality mark, even though they don't even have it, you can actually sue them for damages and receive those damages accordingly. So this is really one of the big advantages if you have the seal of quality. But then, of course, also the question, what is it for the window builder and the end customer? Now, of course, very clear, products that have the mark of quality fulfill a higher quality than what you would normally have to have on a legal basis. And on top of all of that, the rules and regulations actually underwent a public process and have also been worked by experts and are being tolerated not only by politicians but also the public. Otherwise, this process wouldn't have been finalized successfully. And therefore, of course, my products also have a higher quality. Now, on top of that, and that's a huge difference from these RAL regulations compared to other standardization, it is possible to adapt these rules and regulations much more quickly to market changes. So in this way, you can of course ensure that these rules and regulations are always fully up to date. And with that, you can ensure the fact that you get a product of very high quality that also reflects the current state of the art. Now, from this higher quality, as I already announced, you can also derive a higher environmental tolerability, environmental friendliness, because it lasts longer, because it is of higher quality. Or maybe even there are some explicit environmental um, requirements that are being fulfilled, like, for example, CO2 equivalents. We talked about lots of other aspects that can be found once again in these rule sets. And again, all of this can be fulfilled by products and services that have our quality mark. And in order to wrap this up, RAL quality marks serve as a clear and reliable orientation for end customers and window builders. And of course, I can only highly recommend to use windows that have one of the RAL quality marks.